Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode featuring Dr. Seuss's The Cat in the Hat.
Yes.
We're getting weird at rap, everyone.
We're getting weird at rap. And in case you didn't know who we are, because Kevin dropped the intro, though it doesn't really matter. We can do whatever we want. Yeah. But I'm Ryan.
And I'm also Ryan.
Yes.
Also known as Kevin.
And I'm also known as Kevin.
Yeah.
And Thing 1.
And Thing 2.
Yeah. Things are absurd at Wind, Reel, and Print right now. And you can thank the greatest movie of a generation.
I'll tip my hat. Yeah. It is the greatest movie of a generation.
I needed you to say it on mic. And here we are with Cat in the Hat. This was a movie that you recommended. Mm-hmm. And so lay down the law here. Let's talk Cat in the Hat. What's Cat in the Hat mean to you? There is a general consensus in the world, but in classic Kevin fashion, Kevin's got their own thought on it.
Yeah, I remember watching this as a kid and being like terrified of it. So I have that like kind of core memory stuck with me. And then recently just like had revisited it with a friend. We were like watching some movies and we just like watching weird shit. And so this was like kind of the basis of like our film exploration. And when we watched it with the intention of like watching a shit movie. But then it became like, whoa, this is actually kind of good. Like it's doing things that are like interesting. And then eventually I rewatched The Grinch, and I wholeheartedly feel that this is a better movie than The Grinch. Mm-hmm. Just because of the way the story's built, like the aesthetics of it. Like I just feel like it's honoring traditions of cinema. And it's like pushing kind of philosophical thought in an interesting way.
Keep going.
That like I feel like people don't really give it credit for.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean to be like a contrarian, but I truly feel like this is an amazing movie that people need to appreciate. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this kind of selection. I feel like you bring in a lot of great weird movies, so I was like, I need to bring in my weirdest weird.
Yeah, because there's a special place in my heart for weird movies, and also this movie in particular, I watched so much growing up.
Yeah, yeah.
It was such a big thing. Even so, like I was watching it, and I took a photo of like at one part when they're in like the big real estate office or whatever near the beginning, and I sent it to my family in the group chat and was like, do you know what movie this is? And right away everyone knew immediately. And they didn't even say what it was, they just said the quotes, the line from it. And I'm trying to remember what
Fire.
Yes, exactly, that's what it was. Yes. And so it also holds a special, and so I haven't seen it in many a year.
Nice.
And so it was nice to get back into the saddle and experience it. And I was telling Kevin this yesterday, but to put it on the record, for the first 30 minutes or so, I was like, this is a 5-star. Yeah. Like this is so, like it felt really good. And I loved the kids in it.
Sure.
Just were like, I wanted to see more of that, and I was just feeling I really liked Alec Baldwin in it too. Like it was all feeling really good. And then the cat comes in, and I'm like, it's like, even though the movie is already like absurd and weird, it gets even weirder and stranger.
Yeah.
And it goes into all of these different places, and I hated the cat for a while, and then I recognized that maybe I'm supposed to hate the cat.
Yeah.
And maybe I didn't jump on the cat side even as soon as the kids did. I was still like, get away from this cat. What are you doing?
This guy's a nut job.
He's throwing everything away. What are we doing here? But overall, I left the theater in my living room.
Yeah.
Feeling like, damn, this movie has
the sauce.
Yeah. And it's funny on Wikipedia it was saying how, oh no, The film received largely negative reviews from critics, but it has since developed a mild cult following and some positive critical retrospectives.
Including this one.
Yes, exactly. We are in the mild cult following and the some positive critical retrospective.
That's what I mean. Like, people hate watch it. Like, it hasn't really been in the way like Showgirls has kind of revived itself as like a good movie. I feel like this hasn't really reached that point yet where people consider it a good film. And I'm really here arguing that. Like, I really want to push that narrative of like, this is a good movie. Like, the way they built this thing has a lot of intention and purpose. And the message is clear to me. And like, even though it's wild, to me, it's like a constructed wild. Like, it's organized chaos to this film.
For those that don't know, just to like, if you don't know the Cat in the Hat film, just to give like the briefest thing, it's based on the Dr. Seuss book. Stars Mike Myers and
Dakota Fanning, Spencer Breslin.
Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin,
and it obviously adds a lot of elements from the Dr. Seuss book, because obviously Dr. Seuss book is really short and sweet. And I think the Grinch did a similar thing. Like, you have to inject a number of different things to make a feature length thing. And so it follows basically the kids being alone at home, and then the cat shows up, and then basically chaos ensues. And then you have Alec Baldwin basically playing like the character that's trying to get them in trouble and try to reveal that they're ruining the house before this big party that the mom is planning, and she had to leave them there to make sure nothing bad happens. And so obviously it's a great setup, and comedy ensues. As they say.
It's very slapstick.
Exactly. I wanted to get, I think this is a broader, as many of our conversations, because we could talk about like all these little things, and I think we'll get there. But
these little things.
I don't know is that a song reference?
One Direction.
I'm kind of happy I didn't know that. That's okay. That was One Direction was always off my radar. But
you were born a little early for that.
Yeah. No disrespect, folks.
Yeah,
no disrespect. But how do you square the peg? Square the circle in the peg hole. How does the saying go? But there is, so you talk about intentionality in the story and stuff like that. And I see that too, but then you look at and I think there's a broader thing to talk about in movies in general, but knowing, because I didn't know until after all the chaos behind the scenes and how so many of these things were really unintentional. Like, so many things had to go wrong for this to even happen.
Like what?
In a way, like, this movie didn't exist until like Mike Myers got attached.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because his other SNL movie didn't happen.
Right.
And it was like there were stipulations in Mike Myers' contract to have jokes in there that the other people didn't agree with and didn't feel like they needed. Like, there were all of these things where requirements that weren't like screenplay first things.
Sure.
And eventually things down the line that were like required to be put into it. How do you, when you think about a film, how much does all of the outside stuff and kind of hearing about some of those like change the way you think of it? Because it definitely from the beginning, from the screenplay perspective, it wasn't necessarily this perfect thing right out the gate. Like, there's a lot of things that folded in.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, I get what you mean by that. I guess I just mean from the construction of it, like, just the way all these different elements are kind of applied. I feel like even though there is like an inherent chaos to it, maybe that like feeds into the film as well, you know?
Yeah.
That like, because obviously, like, I want to talk about like the kind of absurdism within the film. I feel like that characterization from the Mike Myers side kind of adds to that level of like, this is so fucking random. It feels like there's no intention, but I feel like that is the intention of like breaking expectation and like forcing us to rethink. I feel like that's like the main core of like the film too. So it's like I get where that can affect maybe the way you would see the film. I don't know. I just feel like if you can ascribe meaning to it, then it works. I feel like to some degree.
It's kind of like anything can be art.
Yeah.
If you
or
kind of like
what you had said, like if you can imagine it, it can probably be real.
Yes.
Like I just feel like that with this thing, and even like to the director's credit, right? Like managing a fucking crazy actor is part of your job.
Yeah.
You know, like somehow fitting this person into your film is like kind of part of the artistry of like making a movie.
Yeah.
And so to take something that fucking insane and to implement it into this film and make it work in my eyes is like, okay, that feels like there's some sort of intention here.
Yeah.
Like even if it was like to cover up the mistakes, like that texture makes the film what it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like it is like, and I guess there really isn't any reason for me to try to say what you said, but
right.
I do completely agree. Like it is made through all of these different things, and we talk about a lot of times how it's amazing that a movie can be made at all.
Exactly.
So many pieces. So every movie is not exactly what it was at the beginning, and you can still talk about it and be like, oh, there's intentionality here.
Right. Because Godard, you could argue it was a similar way in the way he would make movies. Like he you wouldn't have a script until you showed up on the shoot day. So, but his films feel his films still feel very intentional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where he doesn't pre-plan like the way a Kubrick does, you know, he's just kind of on the fly doing that type of shit. But it still feels like, oh, there was a decision here kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I mean with this film is like, even though there's all these like weird shit happening, it's like there's still decisions being made. Like that's what conclusion me and my friend had come across was like the amount of forethought to make this effect work, and then like you have to you know, there's all these things that you have to pre-plan to make this one trick happen and work, and it's all built into a joke and shit. Like that's kind of insane. Like imagine that round table meeting with the production designer and shit. Like, we need the couch to open up like a car. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It is insane. Yeah, there was a lot that went. Yeah, because I mean, I would be curious if they thought they had a winner on their hands. I mean, I think every studio thinks that they're going to get a winner with some of these things, but it's very. Oh yeah, after Alan dropped. Oh yeah, Tim Allen was going to be, you can talk. Yeah, think about just how insane that is, and how important casting is. To like so strange.
I mean, I could see it.
Yeah, I definitely could see it. It's different.
Yeah.
And you know, I could also see it being a little better too. Like it's possible.
I feel like it would be more of like a Tim Allen movie though. Like obviously, but you know, knowing like the Santa Claus and like all these other things, I feel like it would be more safe. Whereas
it would definitely.
This doesn't feel like a kid's movie sometimes.
Yeah.
Where it's like the fucking Taiwanese parliament like footage.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so strange.
And then the contract with the lawyers.
Yeah.
Like all these oddly dark and like twisted things that happen. Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, and that's why it has that kind of Burton-esque thing going on. And we should mention Bo Welch, the director, his only film that he ever directed. He was a production designer on a number of Tim Burton films and a number of films just in general, but Edward Scissorhands being a really obvious one.
Yeah, Beetlejuice, Batman Returns.
Exactly. And you can see this movie and see very clear, especially when it comes to 50s style suburbia that this film has. And I think fits totally well into the Cat in the Hat mythos. Oh God. Of just it came out in the 50s too, and you know, and Dr. Seuss, the author. Yeah. There we go. The 50s.
I love it. I love it.
What does that say about it?
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. Because it is, to me, this is like a satirization of suburbia. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, it comes from a very simple, like, kids that are bored. Like, where does your imagination take you?
Right.
And I think it's something the Doctor does
Sure.
quite often.
Sure.
Is kind of explore like these just really fantastical. The Doc.
Yeah, sorry.
No. Yeah. Is there?
Yeah. Yeah, because, like, obviously it's kind of wild and goes into weird places. But I feel like these tendencies, for me, feed into the absurdist philosophy of it. And I just want to quote this little thing that I wrote, where I feel like the three main characters are allegorically representing, like, different perspectives of philosophical thought, where Dakota Fanning's Sally carries a good Samaritan ethos while voicing existentialism's ardent determinism and free will. So, for example, she has her own little schedule of, like, her day. Like, that's a pretty existentialist, like, thing to do.
Yeah.
And then Spencer Breslin's Conrad is Sally's nihilistic foil, rebelling against authority and wreaking havoc, like literally destroying the house.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the nihilistic point of view. The film posits that both positions are problematic, with Sally blinded by a sterilized lifestyle, and Spencer's irreverence and anarchy spilling into ignorant chaos. So then we bring in the cat. And it's so funny that you say it's a great movie until he shows up. I feel like that is the fucking point of the movie, right? Is like he's disrupting this whole shit and like tearing down what you expect of this thing that is being built, right? So the Myers character frequently interjects the film with episodes of seemingly random provocations, challenging Sally to delineate her stance on good behavior and rule following. At the same time, the cat's commitment to chaos and mayhem pushes Spencer past his comfort zone, forcing him to acknowledge that everything has its limits. By the end, this outrageous anthropomorphic feline emphasizes a simplified rendition of absurdist philosophy that helps find meaning in a meaningless society.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because with that whole thing where he's like diagnosing the kids with that little gun thing,
Yeah.
that to me is like pointing to the poles of where absurdism is like balancing out, right? Like you're not good enough, like you're too out of control and you're too uptight.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of their diagnosis, and by the end of the film, they kind of center out.
They meet in the middle. It's interesting that you needed the cat who is totally on one side. Definitely not.
Like you would think it was one-sided, right?
You would think the cat would be the one in the middle bringing them together, but it's interesting. The cat is even more chaotic,
right,
than the Spencer Breslin character, and that's what does it. It works,
right?
But it is kind of like from a theory perspective, it's interesting that could it work the other way? Could like a seriously uptight character, make them realize that they need to meet in the middle, or do you need that kind of like absolutely insane chaos agent?
Well, that's the principles of absurdism, right? Is like that you're taking the conditions of this reality and you're like saying like, yes, none of this makes sense and none of it like matters, but then we still have to like exist and like find meaning within that, right? Because what I find interesting about the cat is like at the end it gets really like sincere and stuff, and like there's a weird like gotcha suckers with the ending of that film to me, where like, oh, he knew what he was doing the entire time. Like he knew we were going to this point. There wasn't anything about the kids like forcing him to stop. It was all a plan that he was kind of premeditating throughout the film. And that to me is like, oh, that is the absurdist philosophy, is like we need to fix these sorts of things, I feel like. Or that's just like my understanding of absurdism. Yeah. Is that we have to like, despite like, or to me, absurdism is like new sincerity. That thing that we had talked about too with like Wes Anderson and stuff is like, despite the dark shit, despite the nihilism, like we still have to find the romanticization and like the meaning within our lives kind of thing. Yeah.
I don't know if this goes on a separate tangent, but it made me think of this absolutely insane like thing about how you were talking about how the cat knows the ending. And basically takes them on this ride, and it made me just think of movies in general, and how the filmmaker, I knew you would go crazy, and about how the filmmaker knows how it's going to end, and it is a ride all the way. But maybe that's too much.
Oh, you broke my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is connecting a lot of dots, because I like, to me, metamodernism is also, like, I would equate that to absurdism, because it's like balancing these two poles and modes of thinking.
Yeah.
And to me, cinema is the metamodern art. Like, it is the representation.
You do
of,
say
like,
that,
metamodernism. So for that kind of construction, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And of course.
Yeah, it's just an interesting thing. I don't really know what to do with that information, but it is like, it just is.
Yeah.
And what does that say? It's all kind of a trick to make us feel something.
Yeah. I mean, that's
and the cat is no different than a director or something like that, or a filmmaker. Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah. I mean, and that's always the end conclusion that I have with these sorts of like theories is like, I have no idea what this means for me and my future, but it's cool that like I can recognize that, you know? Yeah.
And it'll come up, maybe it'll come up later.
Yeah.
You know, the pod continues.
Yeah.
And
well, right when we watched A Woman is a Woman last night, we were like, this feels like cat math.
Yeah.
Like with all the jumping into a musical thing and then like switching in directions like within an instant, like
it simultaneously doesn't care about the like the aspects of it, I guess, or even like the form, and uses it as the punchline,
right?
Like there are a number of it, like it's just it, but I think that does show a mastery of it.
Yeah,
like you kind of need to. It's like how some of the best artists can also make some of the weirdest art. Like you see like very abstract art, and a lot of those artists can also draw classically and all of these things, but make that choice to be different and to see things differently, and that could be here.
Yeah, it's like that, the progression of, I forget who the artist was. Maybe it was like Dali, but like the self-portraits of like this one artist as they like go from realism into like surrealism. And then the self kind of like breaks apart.
Yeah.
But I also feel like that when I was younger with music, I would start to like an artist more when they would make something that most of their fans hated.
Yeah. Why? Like purely from like it just shows that they're kind of in touch with their creativeness.
I would just end up liking it more.
Yeah.
Like kind of coincidentally end up liking these specific albums from different artists. Not even like a contrarian point, like literally because I thought it was a better example of like art.
Yeah.
And I feel like you need to get weird in order to uncover like certain things.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I think so. I think you have to not be, and that's why I always, even if I don't like where a music artist is going with their music, being able to change it's
so important.
It's so important, and I have so much respect for that.
Yeah.
And to be willing to say like, you know what, that thing that you love, it already exists.
Yeah.
You can have that as much as you want.
Right.
But I'm a human on a journey.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep changing.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect
more
for
power
that.
to them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Tyler the Creator, I feel like is someone who just like transforms every single time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was like a huge fan of his early work, and even into Scumfuck Flower Boy.
Yeah.
And then I'm not like the biggest Igor fan, but I have so much respect for going in that direction and for him getting weird with it.
Yeah.
And showing that he really had an understanding of R&B.
Sure.
And that sort of style to be able to go in that direction, and that he gives me little treats every so often of the things that I really like, and I'm happy for it
because he knows what the people want.
You're like,
he's an entertainer.
Yeah,
at the end
exactly.
Of the day. Yeah, fucking art, man, it's great.
Yeah,
I love
and Cat in the Hat is art.
Yeah, whether you like
whether you like it or not, suck it. It's art, baby.
Yeah, it's crazy. I would always say like, man, no one makes movies like this anymore. But I feel like Poor Things and Barbie really hit like this kind of tone for me. Yeah, just like kind of putting it all out there and like not being afraid of like taking risks and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, don't be afraid to do that with your films
Yeah.
too, people.
Exactly. Be absurd.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you need to. Those are the best parts of movies for me, is when it's like, oh my God,
get
you just,
weird.
yeah, why? Wow, you just did that.
Yeah.
Because you could.
Yeah.
Like, because it's all made up. Like,
Yeah.
why are we, like, rules are great to be broken.
Yeah.
And it proves a mastery of those rules if you can break it in an intentional way. And I don't mean like breaking the 180 or something like that, and
Sure.
then doing like there are some simple things where it's like, but if you do it intentionally with like a purpose, then I understand. But it's
Sure.
like there's a sloppy breaking of the rules, and there's a mastery to breaking the rules.
Right.
And
The intentionality. yeah.
exactly. And I think that's also art in general. I think that what makes art, I think this maybe it's just me, but I think it's a general, like if the intention is for it to be art, it's art.
Yeah.
You know, it can be at varying levels, but I also would agree like some things are art and maybe they weren't intended to be it, but
Sure.
you can, that's such a,
apply the similar principles to the thing,
exactly.
yeah.
And maybe Cat in the Hat wasn't meant to be art.
Yeah.
And now you
was
can look at it.
Definitely seen as a commodity, I think.
Oh,
And then
they had the rights.
Yeah, yeah. And then it became a thing. But I don't know. I think because it's Brian Glazer and Ron Howard that produced this. So, like, as much as I don't really care for like their approach to filmmaking, like there is a level of artistry that they're applying to the producing of it.
yeah.
You know, they went out of their way to hire Bo Welch.
Yeah.
You know, they wanted this guy specifically to direct this film. So there was intention that even in just getting the director onto this film,
Yeah.
you know. So I feel like that speaks a lot to like the artistry of it, you know, bringing in a production designer over like an actual traditional director, you know.
And you can feel it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, that's the soul of this movie is
Yeah.
the set and the character design and all these things, you know. Yeah.
Right on.
Fuck yeah. Go
You'll
watch.
never, I mean, maybe there are some videos on YouTube, but you're not going to hear a conversation about the Cat in the Hat in this way. This is prime wind, reel, and print material, and you got it straight from the source.
Oh yeah. Straight from the well.
All right. Thank you, folks.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Bye-bye.
Wind, Reel, and Print is a podcast by Salad Brain Productions. You can find us on Instagram at Wind, Reel, and Print Pod. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you like the show, leave a rating and review. We'll see you next time.